A Gorgon's mask. Every morning before she starts her day, Medusa stands in front of her bathroom mirror. Her yellow, snake-slit eyes glance up, catching the identical eyes of the snakes on her head. The small snakes that have grown overnight whisper light hisses into her ears. "Please don't." They beg in desperation, "Please, mother. Please." Medusa huffs, her pupils becoming impossibly thin as her eyes narrow into a deadly glare. Her hand extends towards the sharp scissors sitting at the edge of her sink and she hisses out through clenched teeth, "Shut up." And so she begins her daily beauty routine. Step 1. Get rid of the little pests. Medusa braces herself as she positions the scissors at the base of each noodle-thin snake. You'd think she'd be used to the pain by now, but each snip of her fateful shears cuts off a little piece of her. She used to think of her snakes as her children. Each one had its own personality and voice. She loved them all and they loved her. They still do, but times have changed and people change. Now these snakes are simply a burden to Medusa's thriving human life. Her wig hides the bloody cap underneath. Step 2. Conceal the reptile. Using scar wax, Medusa meticulously applies thin layers to smooth out the prominent scales lining her face. It's heavy and suffocating, but the end result is worth it after she applies full coverage foundation. She dabs on the paint-thick liquid to her face, ears, neck, chest, cleavage, and hands until no green peeks through. After she adds blush, contour, highlight, lips and eyebrows to her blank canvas and sets everything so it doesn't budge. Step 3. Eliminate the pesky statue problem. This was a tough one. Sunglasses used to be Medusa's solution, but that isn't exactly socially acceptable in most indoor areas. After a night of wine and online retail therapy, a pair of colored contacts came in the mail. As it turns out, the thin layer over her pupils negates the effects of her stony burden. She pops in the itchy, uncomfortable contacts, careful to avoid the hard work she put into her foundation. After, a light dusting of eyeshadow and a bold liner. Step 4. Shave down the fangs. Like her snakes, her fangs grow in again every night. With a rough file, Medusa shaves the tips of her canines down to a rounded point. She could easily get away with not doing this step, but after a mishap involving another party's tongue in her mouth and a non-consensual piercing being given, she chooses to do this step just in case. After all this is said and done, Medusa dresses herself in carefully selected clothing to hide the green that isn't concealed under the mountains of makeup. With her scalp bloody and scabbed, her skin heavy and hot, her eyes irritated and watery, and her fangs sore and dull, she heads out for the day. After all, beauty is pain.